Because this craziness, this sickness in this country now is shot through the whole society. People in law enforcement have also succumbed to right-wing extremism and white nationalism. Again, what this points up is how pervasive and vast a problem this is, and we will be dealing with it for a long time.
When you work late nights in dark, repulsive conditions, you probably expect to get paid. They don't. There are thousands of hard-working, underpaid men and women in your city right now. They're called musicians. Any given night of the week, they put themselves on the line for you and your drunk friends. The problem? You're not even there. The beer he got paid with tonight will never keep him warm. That guitar she still owes 12 payments on will never love her back. You can help. Go to your local dive bar right now. Pay the cover charge. Sit down with one of these outcasts and put yourself in their shoes. Take one home. Hell, take two if you want. Support local music. Sleep with a musician tonight. Without you, all we have left are ballads.
T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12. You do 11. 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 You do 11.
things that I do. We're gonna pause that and then fade over in dramatic fashion. Ooh. Well, hi there, folks. It's me, Big Ugly Jim. I'm in a non-typical space for my streaming, but that's because I have a early 20-something sleeping on the couch I normally stream from because my kid, yes, check hardware first, definitely. My kid brought my stepkid home, and they were up late playing video games and talking and smoking marijuana weeds, and so there is a child sleeping on my couch. So I'm in the kitchen. This is where I do my exciting workplace work. So should be no big deal. Ever since the freezer in my fridge finally conked out and stopped going all the time, everything's been golden over here. So hopefully everything's good. I'm always nervous when I'm going on Wi-Fi because that can be sketch, but looks like I got a good connection. Looks like everything's going well. And yeah, hi everybody, it's me. Hope everyone's doing well. I know I, for one, am doing fantastic. We got a huge snowfall last night. I had a weird sleep, so I fell asleep at like 11 or 11:30 or something, and I ended up waking up at like 2 in the morning because that seems healthy, and was up till about 4:30. And in the time from 2 to 4:30, there was a little bit of snow, a little dusting of snow. Woke up, and there was so much snow, it broke a branch on the tree that's right by my bedroom window. Didn't obviously break my bedroom window, but great big tree branch in one of these positions. So there's a lot of snow out there, but that's cool. Snow's all right. Other than that, it's been a decent week. Work good, life good, and I hope the same is true for all of you in viewing land. Let's just get into some chat and stuff. I wanted to start a little bit easy and sort of progress from there. Let's talk about a fun topic like the Ron Desantis decision to arrest people for voter fraud when they voted legally, or so they thought. This is something that I didn't even know about until like yesterday, so I'm not by any means an expert on this. A lot of snow never fails. 25 degrees early in the week, then snow at the end. Yeah, like guaranteed. I haven't looked at Facebook today, but I guarantee you it's going to be full of a bunch of people going, snow in the Canadas? How is that a thing that ever happened in the past? Never. And I will just go like this because it's fucking end of October. We're gonna get snow. This is just the way the world do, and ain't nothing a surprise about there. Yeah, DeSantis is a horrible person. What I find interesting is I have a feeling like there's this reality at play. I don't think any of them are horrible people. I think that what they are is people who don't give a fuck. Sociopaths or whatever the circumstance may be. And that's not me diagnosing anyone with, sociopathology or anything like that. But there is something to be said about the fact that we keep electing leaders that are suffering from a condition called monsterism. And Ron Desantis is one of those. He's genuinely unnerving to me. Like, I legitimately find him frightening because I don't think he believes anything. I really don't. I think that he will literally do or say anything for power, which is neither based nor red-pilled. It's actually very ugly. And so this most recent thing, I'm going to see if I can find some details because I literally have not dug into this at all. Let's go news. Go to Google first. And I'll switch over so you can see as I type. You can pay attention for the home game. We're going to go Ron DeSantis, news, voting. Miami judge dismisses voter fraud case trumpeted by DeSantis. But let's just see if we can find a bit of an explanation. So we have an article from The Guardian about the, looks like it's mostly going to be this voter fraud thing. Yeah, MSNBC. Nice unbiased source, wuckety. Obviously, always take your news with a grain of salt. If you don't have salt, you can use MSG. And if you don't like MSG, I don't know how to help you. So, Ron DeSantis voter fraud arrests aim to suppress black votes. DeSantis seems to be counting on the arrests to encourage some share of discourage some share of Democrats from voting. And there's the man himself. He kind of looks like he's mid-poop, but, whatever. Okay. Ask Americans what voter fraud looks like, and many will describe it as stuffing ballot boxes with votes from dead people or rigging voting machines so they spit out predetermined winners. They might even mention jackbooted thugs, Ku Klux Klan riders, or crooked corporations threatening voters' jobs if they don't vote a certain way. What they don't describe as fraud is the case of an American citizen who, after being assured by government officials that he or she can register to vote, registers and votes. I mean, that seems to me like a pretty obvious slam dunk. When you call the government and you say, here is my whole story, am I able to do this? And they go, yes, here is your voter registration card. And you go, I am filling it out and I am returning it to you. And they go, cool beans, bro. Thank you for the electoralism. And then you go and do the vote, and then you get arrested for voter fraud. That feels like not the same thing. What they might actually call a fraud is the sight of government officials dragging away those voters in handcuffs. But the arrests of those who may have been misled is part of the latest scheme by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to burnish his conservative credentials before the 2024 presidential election. After having falsely claimed that voter fraud is a serious issue, DeSantis, who leads a state with almost 14.5 million registered voters, announced in August that the Office of Election Crimes and Security would charge 20 whole people who he said wrongly voted. 20 people. That's more than 19. Many, if not all of them, may simply have been confused about whether they could vote. The publicized arrest should be seen as voter intimidation in the name of election integrity. DeSantis seems to be counting on the arrests, which seem to have targeted black and brown voters instead of the majority white Republican voters. Gasp! It's in keeping with past attempts in the South to use poll taxes, literary tests, grandfather clauses, and violence to keep black people from registering to vote. So there's video here. Body cam video sheds light on DeSantis' election integrity arrests, which we can watch if you want, but I don't think anything is going to be surprising. In fact, the only thing I found surprising about this was the cops doing the arrests are like, dude, I'm sorry, we have to arrest you. It's a bond, like, you won't spend time in jail. It feels like even they know that this is horsepucky. Thanks to police body cam video originally obtained by the Tampa Bay Times, now we get to see the confusion not only of the accused criminal voters, but also the confusion of the police, who were set out to arrest them. When Nathan Hart told his arresting officer that someone at the driver's license place told him to sign up to vote, even after Hart told them he was a convicted felon, that officer said, then there's your defense. You know what I'm saying? This sounds like a loophole to me. Yeah, you've seen it? Yeah. So we don't need to watch. I've seen it as well. That's how I became aware of the issue. In 2018, Florida voters approved a constitutional amendment that restored the right to vote to many people convicted of felonies. However, people convicted of murder or felony sex offenses didn't automatically get their rights to vote back. All 20 people DeSantis said would be charged fell into that group of convicted people whose rights weren't automatically restored. But some Florida officials don't seem to know the law, if we're to believe the reports that they've encouraged some of those who were later arrested to register. For example, 55-year-old Ramona Oliver's attorney said that despite Oliver's having been convicted of a second-degree murder charge, She was given a voter ID card twice in 2020 by the Florida State Department, which handles the voter rolls and reports to DeSantis. Imagine using confused police to give up your publicity stunt, diverting services from all the really bad crimes you also complained about. Yeah, this is the thing that I fucking I always find just stunning about like DeSantis is big on publicity stunts. I don't think I need to go over any more of the article. I'm gonna just talk about Ron Desantis. He loves him a good publicity stunt. You know, the whole thing with sending migrants to that rich people place where the rich people do rich people things, but it's mostly Democrat. You know, he gets off on the public spectacle of presenting himself as this maverick. And I get it. Like, that is how populism do. Populist leaders have always done these grand and sweeping gestures. Like, it's ridiculous. I remember talking about a different kind of populist, but we were talking about Mussolini when I was in college and the propaganda films that he used to put out. And Mussolini loved him some propaganda films. He was a big fan of them. And there was one that the teacher talked about, or the instructor talked about, and it was the film shows there's a farmer with a cart and horse, and the cart and horse is, the cart's gone off the road and it's stuck, and around the corner drives Mussolini with his driver, and the farmer is struggling. He can't get the wagon off the road. And Mussolini jumps out, rips off his shirt, big barrel-chested man, very proud of his body, very body positive, that Mussolini. And he runs over and he tries to move the wagon, and he can't move it either. So he and the farmer work together, and together they get the wagon out of the rut and off, and everyone is happy. And this is like classic cult of personality shit, right? The hidden message in the meeting is you can't do it on your own. Mussolini can't do it on his own, but together, y'all gonna fuck shit up. DeSantis is cut from the same cloth. He is a populist leader who wants to inspire people with his populism, right? And this is what I say when I describe him as someone who doesn't believe in anything except the quest for power. I don't think he gives a shit about voter fraud. I don't think anyone at high levels of government, with exception of Trump, who is probably deranged, I don't think they give a shit, because it's really not a thing that it matters, right? They have essentially got, like the article says, they found 20 examples of people doing voter fraud this way. That means this isn't a game changer. DeSantis won his election by something like 35,000 votes or something, if memory serves. I don't know for sure. And obviously, Florida's Trump victory wasn't down to a 20 votes or anything like that. It's empty. But it's the kind of gesture that waves to the people in the back who are not paying attention but are happy to go, well, the goddamn criminals are voting and shit. Let me just ask a question. And I'm obviously I'm asking chat, but I'm also asking the universe, and I don't expect a response from either. Why the fuck can we be comfortable with the idea that there are people that don't get a vote? Personally, if I was the boss of the world in a democracy, which seems like a completely silly thing to say, because if I was the boss of the world, it wouldn't be a democracy. But let's pretend that made sense. If I was the boss of the world and I wanted to have democracy in my totalitarian oligarchy, I would give the vote to prisoners. I would give the vote to fucking everyone. You're still a citizen. You're still impacted by the decisions that are made. And it's not like, the big threat is that the villains in jail are going to form a solid voting bloc and vote for a particular candidate. If this is a democracy and we're implying that individual voices count, then that would include individual voices that are in jail, especially in a situation like America finds itself, where like one out of every one person is in. I'm obviously bullshitting, but like everyone's in fucking jail in the States at some point. Even Hunter Biden apparently. It's just another way to keep black people from voting. It's all looped into the same systemic BS that old white men set up with precision. And what's weird to that to me about all of that is, like there's some truth to the idea that black people in Florida typically vote for Democrat over Republican. So like it's a thing that makes sense to do to try and curtail that. But the other way to go about it, like it's not like black people are just like genetically Democrat, right? Black people don't have a problem with conservatism. In fact, a lot of strong conservative values are in the black community. There's a lot of very deep religiosity. There's a lot of very deep importance on a bunch of very conservative things. The idea that black people vote for conservatives is because the positions of the that they vote for Democrats is because the positions of the Conservative Party are threatening to them. If the Conservative Party wants to engage black voters, just don't do monster things against them. It's a thing. Are we good? What's going on?
He was just asking me the time.
Oh, all right. Hey, that to me seems like a much better scenario than, making it so people can't vote so that you can keep your little grasp on power. You want to be in power in a democracy, appeal to the people. That seems a thing. But DeSantis knows that this isn't going to do anything. It's not going to make elections safer. It's not going to improve the validity of the results. Even if these 20 people voted and shouldn't have, this sounds like a process error, and a process error that represents like such a tiny margin of the actual people involved, right? Like who cares? 20 votes? Just if you find that 20 people voted that shouldn't have, and it's for this like legitimate confusion, just say those votes didn't count. That's fine. Let's jump back and let's take a look at what the other articles were saying, the responses. So we'll look at the one from The Guardian. Miami judge dismisses voter fraud case trumpeted by DeSantis. Oh, message for the tofu-eating workerati. No, Guardian, I don't want to give you money. Okay, so a Miami judge on Friday dismissed one of the 19 voter fraud persecutions loudly trumpeted by Florida's Governor Ron Desantis, a significant development that comes as the cases draw scrutiny. The case on Friday involved Robert Lee Wood, a 56-year-old Miami man who registered to vote in 2020 and voted in the presidential election last year. State prosecutors indicted Wood, who was black, saying he registered and voted knowing he was ineligible. He was ineligible because he was convicted in 1991, but Wood said he did not know that. He registered in 2020 when he was approached by a canvasser and was sent a voter registration card by the state. Judge Milton Hirsch dismissed the case on Friday. Wood was charged with two third-degree felonies, each punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. The prosecutions, all of which involve people with prior felony convictions, have come under intense scrutiny. Several of those charged have said they did not know that they couldn't vote and were not informed of their ineligibility until after they voted. Hirsch dismissed the case because he said statewide prosecutors had overstepped their authority in bringing charges against Wood. So that's an interesting thing. I want to understand that. In a request to dismiss the case, Wood's attorney argued that the statewide prosecutor's office, which is handling all 19 cases, didn't have the authority to handle the case. In Florida, the statewide prosecutor is authorized to handle only cases that involve criminal conduct in 2 or more of the state's judicial circuits, but Wood registered and voted in a single place, Miami. Prosecutors argued that Wood committed a multi-jurisdictional criminal act. Even though he registered and voted in Miami, his registration was transmitted to the state capital, Tallahassee, for review. The criminal act, the state argued, was therefore committed in 2 jurisdictions. In its argument, the statewide prosecutors argued that they had authority to prosecute elections crimes anywhere in Florida. So, he registered to vote in Miami, but his registration was sent to Tallahassee. what? How does that, like, that doesn't make any sense. Not that that you couldn't have that get sent to Tallahassee, but how is the mail system delivering his registration card a second criminal jurisdiction? Like, that's fucking stupid. Hirsch disagreed, saying the crime, if there was one, occurred exclusively in Miami. Robert Lee Wood's misconduct, if misconduct it was, consisted of registering to vote and voting in his county of residence. Yes, his voter application and his ballot were transported to another Florida jurisdiction, but they were not transported by him, nor by any putatively criminal co-perpetrator, he wrote in his ruling. Even assuming that Mr. Wood's passive role in the transmission of his voter application form and completed ballots to Tallahassee is activity that can be ascribed to him, it is not his criminal activity. So it's good to see that is getting thrown out. The particular reasons, I'm just going to adjust my camera here. The particular reasons it's getting thrown out, I think, are they're accurate. More importantly, this shouldn't be a thing, right? Like, it's dumb. It would be one thing if these were people who were actively engaged in some kind of criminal conspiracy to obtain a voter ID card when they did not have the right to do so. That I can totally understand. Although I think everyone should have the right to vote if you have laws in place that say these people can't vote and some of them do, then that would be a violation of that law and fine. But these were, 20 people who contacted the government and said, I would like to vote. And the government looked at their circumstances and said, here you go. Like, I guess there's an argument that can be made for entrapment there. Because it's the job of the government to control who has access to vote. And if you register and you're allowed to register and then your voting is an act of criminality, then you were set up to vote by said government agency. Just an interesting wrinkle on that particular argument. The whole thing is stupid, and the reason I thought I'd mention it is just it points out how ridiculous the situation we find ourselves in is. We're literally like, we're proud of democracy. Democracy's so fucking cool. We did all the cool things to make democracy. The Greeks invented it, don't you know? And now we're the best democracies in the whole wide world, whether that's Canada or the US or whatever. The convoy guys, like, we think that it's important to have democracy, and that's why we're going to petition to get rid of all of the elected parts of government and replace it with an appointed council of us. That's not democracy, you silly git. The more you put in place to prevent people from voting, the less democratic you are. Right? If you look at the story of Greece, if I'm not mistaken, in ancient Greece, where democracy was hatched from an egg, the voting was actually only possible if you were a landowner, which meant that there was a large populace that were unable to vote and therefore did not have their voices part of the voices of the people. So, maybe that's not all that democratic. I would personally support just allowing people to vote. You do the necessary checks to make sure people don't vote 17 times and they don't vote as dead people and all the shit that people can do, obviously. But why the fuck do we care? If you are a murderer or you are a sex offender, why aren't you allowed to vote? Why does that fucking change a goddamn thing? I don't understand. I don't see it. It doesn't make sense to me. That said, that is apparently the way the rule works, and I do support the idea that if people are intentionally, actively breaking that law, or even accidentally breaking that law without some kind of government assistance to do so, then yeah, like if you've got a law and your people are breaking it to vote, well then those votes are illegal. I don't think people should be, chastigated and thrown in jail or fined heavily for it, because I think those things are kind of stupid, punitive measures that don't deal or fix the problem. When you're talking about voter fraud rules, what you're talking about is preventing people from actively devaluing the electoral process. I get that, and while I'm not a big fan of the whole thing, I do recognize that that's a valid thing to do. Fine. You want to protect democracy, have those laws. That's entirely your business. But once those laws start being obviously used to limit and control who has the access to voting, well, now you're just being a dickcock. And don't be a dickcock. If there's one thing we can learn from Ron Desantis, it's that being a dickcock works. I would not be surprised if he is the next president of the United States. I would not be surprised at all. I think Joe Biden is, I said at the time, I think he was the worst possible choice. But if he, survives the end of his term, I don't think he's going to be wanting to run again, and I don't think people would want him to run again. So you have, a scenario where you have no incumbent, because incumbents always have a certain natural advantage. You have no incumbent, and you have, the Conservative Party will do a great job of whipping up the public frenzy and talking about what are their usual talking points: corruption, spending. Apparently now it's we're leaping into the realm of degeneracy as like a valid thing that we should be talking about at a federal level. That's neat. But yeah, like this is what they'll do. They will whip up populist talking points. And like, 'cause, here in Alberta, every single provincial election, we talk about abortion. Abortion, not really a provincial issue, and not something that ever is part of the electoral process. But it's a good way to whip people up. You got your Christians who are going to get whipped up. You got your right. Basically, it works for everybody except libertarians, because genuinely libertarian people on the right don't care if people have abortions. They don't want the government to say it's not allowed, because that's an infringement on liberty. But the rest of the conservatives are like, oh yeah, Jesus said baby's good, which he didn't do, for the record. Jesus, he said baby's good, but he didn't come up with any prescriptive, like, you can't have abortion stuff. In fact, as we've talked about, I think it's in Numbers where there's a Bible verse that's like, here's how you go about getting an abortion. You go to the priest and you drink the dirty water from the altar, and but it's only for, like, if that woman be cheating. But that's in the Bible, how to have a home abortion, do a little homemade pennyroyal tea, and away you go. Anyways, DeSantis is a garbage goblin, and he does pose a real threat of becoming president. I don't think Trump is going to actually run in 2024, and I think if he went for the leadership of the party, I think a lot of people would be like, hey now, old-timey, maybe your brain's going, and maybe we don't want to have another super old guy running the country when we have Ron Desantis right here populisting away. But this is the problem with our current politics is you have essentially what it seems to, for the last little while, what it's come down to is ridiculous right-wing like caricatures of actual right-wing arguments, people like Sarah Palin, or even to a certain degree Mitt Romney, and like the Tea Party movement and all that kind of stuff, versus what are the opposition is always some establishment Democrat, who the establishment Democrats are boring, they're uninspired, they're not going to put out the fires that are actually burning in the world. They're just going to go, yeah, fire's bad. We should do something about that. But then do nothing about it, because why would you? And so that's why Trump got elected. The people are frustrated. They wanted something different. Biden got elected because something different wasn't necessarily something better. And a lot of people were very actively disgusted by the whole Trump experience. But people want something different. I would love to see, in like Canadian politics, I would love to see something very different. I would love to see someone who actually has a chance of making real progress, and doing so in a way that isn't the traditional, because basically Canadian politics is conservatives in power, conservatives corruption, liberals in power, liberals corruption, conservatives in power, and just like on an infinite loop. And it's boring. It's becoming more interesting now that we have sort of like the right is doing in Canada is doing what the right in the States is doing, and that is like doing their level best to appeal to just the worst part of the right. There's this need to lean into the not necessarily the fascist talking points, although we're seeing a lot of that, but even the less toxic aspects of the right, or parts of the right that aren't saying directly fascist stuff, are still leaning far right, and it's very concerning. Last week we talked about Danielle Smith, the UCP leader, who is now my premier. Unelected, of course, because fuck a democracy. Am I right? But Danielle Smith, her whole Sovereignty Act is nothing but empty populism. It would not work. And it doesn't have to work. I think it was Tyler Shandro was making a big deal about, like, we're going to pass legislation that says that the RCMP can't come into Alberta and steal guns. And that's not a thing that's happening. Even with the current law, there's no seizure of guns involved. Like, there was a fairly controversial law passed by Trudeau and the Liberals with support, I believe, of the NDP for gun control. And it basically says, like, we're not bringing new handguns into the country. We're not selling handguns in the country. You can't buy a new one. You can't transfer ownership. Like, we're kind of one and done with these things. That is different than the RCMP showing up at your door and taking your gun. So that's screaming about a nothing burger. Oh my God, Danielle Smith is oof. Yes, Danielle Smith is super oof. I actually went over her career. It's funny because I posted a thing yesterday. I posted the video, shorter. It's like 40 minutes long, of our looking at Danielle Smith. And what I did was I brought up Wikipedia as a means to sort of have the reference point, and then talk about my own experiences and my own things I've seen regarding Danielle Smith. And someone commented, like, you bring up a Wikipedia page? No thank you. What's next, CBZ News? And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder politically how you lean, sir. I wonder if your derision for the CBC News and for Wikipedia is because you're one of them and not one of us. And I don't like to be one of them and one of us, but he was one of them. So didn't get that full view. I'm okay. Probably sleep all right. But yeah, Danielle Smith started her career in politics as a school board trustee on the school board that was so fucking bad that the Minister of Education was like, fine, we don't have a school board anymore because she's a garbage person. Now, I don't know her. I don't pretend to know whether she's a smart, savvy leader or a monster or whatever. Like, the same is true for, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene or any of the Lauren Boebert. I don't know them. I only know how they present themselves. So I'm not commenting on Danielle Smith is a big dumb stupid. I'm commenting on everything I see from Danielle Smith makes me think this is a person I do not want to lead my province. And hopefully the election of Danielle Smith will cause a lot of people to go, you know what? Remember when the NDP were in power and the world wasn't on fire? That's a thing. But I don't know, because people have such short-term memories. Like right now in the States, they're talking about the fact that for the last 2 years, the Biden economy has been garbage. Like, was that Biden, or was that maybe a pandemic that we were getting affected by? Why the hell hasn't Biden solved the supply chain? Because it's not the job of the president to fix China. You know what I mean? Like it's staggering to me that people don't get that. She's objectively smart. She is also objectively not fit for premier. What I mean by that is some people just shouldn't have some jobs. Example, I should never be in IT, and I think politics is that for her. I think that from what little I ultimately know about Danielle Smith, I think that she should have a career in politics in the sense that she's a very effective liar and misdirector. One of the things we did was we went over one of her Herald articles she wrote back when she was a journalist, talking about how smoking was based in red pilled, and smoking would save all of your lives, and maybe if the big government hadn't been so quick to ban things like or light cigarettes, maybe we'd be all better off. I think she's very conniving and very devious, and as a result, politics seems like the perfect place for her. Unfortunately, it's not the politics that I would want the world to have, but it's definitely the politics that we're stuck with. I need to come and visit your streams more often. Well, Kitty, we're all busy. It's, you're always welcome whenever you have the time, and I genuinely enjoy seeing you in my comments. You're always fun to interact with, and in person. We're pals too. I haven't seen you in forever. I hope you're well. Maybe from there, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the whole. I mentioned like the death of capitalism, or the ailing of capitalists, the ailing health of capitalism. I don't understand why we're still here. In real life friends. Yes, we are in real life friends. I don't understand why we're still here. We learned back, in the days of Teddy Roosevelt. Wasn't it Teddy that brought in the New Deal? We learned that capitalism on its own is doomed to fail. Right? It's doing right now what it do, right? All the talk about why is inflation so high, why are companies making, disgusting, massive profits, why are CEO salaries so high when worker salaries are so low, all of those things can be answered with the simple statement: this is what capitalism is. This is the end result. So when they say late stage capitalism, what they mean is, if left to its own devices, this capitalism will continue farther and farther, throwing us into chaos until it collapses. Late stage is a term that I first encountered when it came to cancer, and when you talk about someone who has like late stage cancer, it means that the cancer has basically whooped the shit out of them, and they're in that like final big fucking battle, and hopefully things work. This is where we're at with capitalism, and there are two solutions. We can just keep pushing capitalism to keep doing what capitalism does and go, why is it doing what capitalism does? Or we can do what Teddy Roosevelt did and say something has to change. Or we can go, farther than what Teddy Roosevelt did, because the New Deal wasn't exactly like an implementation of socialism. But people are scared of socialism, and they're scared of it because, China, the USSR, the examples that we've had of communism are not ones that super well worked. Now, that's not entirely true. A lot of places in South America, if I understand correctly, and I may not, a lot of places in South America had very effective socialist leaderships until the CIA disrupted them, because the CIA do what the CIA do. But like an actual socialist country, like legitimate socialist country, hasn't been done yet. Or if it has, it didn't get off the ground because the CIA were there to fund insurrections. Again, that's how they protected the sphere of influence for America. When we hear about communism, we immediately, and I'm the same way. I don't like communism. I don't want communism to be the thing that we get to. I am not a Marxist-Leninist. But we hear about it and we immediately go to the story of China, the story of the USSR, and for good reason. They're practical examples of when this thing was done. It's kind of silly because you can do the exact same thing with capitalism and look at all of the worst examples of capitalism implemented, like the Depression era America capitalism, and go, well, that system didn't work. Or just look around and go, hey, shit's a little fucked up right now. But that's not what we do. We go and we romanticize, because it's the system that, most of the people in Canada, the United States, think is best. So we romanticize it and we ignore all of the bad stuff, and we champion all of the good stuff. And there is good stuff, absolutely, right? When you contrast it with something like communism and you go, everyone has a job, but their jobs are menial and lifeless, and everyone gets exactly the same amount of money if you're the guy who pushes the one button on the panel, or if you're the doctor. Like, yeah, I get it. Oh, I am Canadian. We can't have clean energy because it'll destroy the oil industry. We can't have healthcare because it'll destroy the health insurance industry. We can't have peace because it will destroy the weapon industry. Capitalism built a system we can't afford to do. They can't afford to do the right thing. Good morning, I am Canadian. It's good to see you, my friend. That's absolutely, these are the conservative talking points. We want an educated population, but we don't want to have public education, because public education is the government doesn't have a role in that environment. We want to move away from oil because, it's killing the planet. But is it really? And also, if we do that, the oil companies will fail, and industry will fail, and everything will fail. So we have to keep going. It's a really good model for societal failure, ultimately, right? So when we talk about ailing capitalism, like the people who are in the ruling class of capitalism have no incentive to resolve issues around things like, the fact that there is global warming, right? If you own an oil company, why would you take all of your profits and invest it in green energy? It's not going to benefit you. You're going to continue to live your life, and then you will die, and someone else can fucking solve the problem. Why should you pay for a problem that doesn't affect you ultimately? Well, that's what capitalism do. This is why I think that we need better answers, right? As a libertarian socialist, I don't believe in, the rule of a vast and powerful government, but this is the system that we're in, and I think that we need to lean into the idea that sometimes the government does need to provide direction on things that we may not want it to provide direction on. If you don't care about society because you own all the things, you don't care if society collapses because it doesn't affect you. Selfish assholes are Republicans. Yes. And more to the point, you're protected from the fallout of that collapse, right? I think that most of the exorbitantly wealthy people cannot envision a scenario where they would have to live without their exorbitant wealth, and certainly don't know what an experience that doesn't have that. Like Elon Musk can't imagine what it would be like to work 18-hour days just to pay your rent, right? That's something that he has never experienced and can't possibly understand. And people who are at that level of like CEO of a company, like your job is kind of esoteric, right? Your job is really around coming up with corporate strategies, going for, golf meals with business development intentions, and golf games or meals. Like, this is how work is. And they will talk about, oh, they work really hard, and they're the driving force of the company. But they're on like 18 different boards, and they're C-level executives on 3 different, major corporations and shit. Like, if your job's that hard, you can't do that. Is it merely mental illness or raw evil? I don't think it's evil. I think it's selfishness, which, I mean, we can call evil if we want to, but we are a social species. I talk about this all the time. And for reasons unknown to me, we create systems that can be abused or manipulated by those that get them for their own personal gain, right? And this happens at every level and every kind of thing. It's just that when it happens at that level, the top level, those people have the most ability to gain and to game. And so they do, right? And it makes sense. I believe that what we need is to move farther towards a socialist model where it's not CEOs that are reaping the rewards. It's the people that are doing the work that are reaping the rewards. I value the role of a CEO to some degree, because strategic vision for companies is very important. Unfortunately, most CEOs don't do that. Most CEOs, in my experience, and from watching the world around me, are not strategic thinkers. They're just people who are in the right place to get those dollars. Narcissism is a character trait of many authoritarians. Yep. Not only that, I would say that like sociopathy is obviously, there's all the talk about, most of the people at the top levels of government and business are psychopaths and sociopaths. It's not actually true. The percentage of psychopaths and sociopaths that are in those levels is like higher, but not substantially higher than the general population. However, it is my contention that we actually and actively encourage people to become more sociopathic. We talk about the roles that the values that we want our leaders to have. We want them to be compassionate. We want them to be smart. We want them to be capable. We want them to be strategic. We want them to be approachable. All of these things. But the people we put in those roles generally don't tick any of those boxes. So we have a situation where we have things that we say we want and things that we show we want, right? So we're kind of lying to ourselves, and lies show us just as much important as truths, right? When you're interacting with people and they're lying to you, their lies provide who they want you to see them as opposed to their actions, which show them who they are, or show you who they are. Sympath, empath, sociopath, psychopath. The sociopath is not social, blows my mind. Well, the thing and I'm by no means an expert here, but my understanding is that we came up with the concept of the psychopath to sort of justify, the true evils in our society, the people who, are mass murderers or kitty diddlers or whatever. We go, those people are psychopaths, and came up with sort of a diagnostic criterion around that. And then there were people who meet all those criterion, but who don't do those things, or do them in more business-friendly ways. Because remember, robbing 300,000 people of their wealth would be criminal unless you're, a corporation doing it, in which case it's, good business. But I think that the sociopath term came from the idea of a psychopath who's got some kind of capacity for social skills. And they tried to sort of hem and haw about some of the nuances. Narcissistic personality disorder is another one that, it's hard to see a real difference between any of those diagnostically that couldn't be just explained by circumstances. But I'm by no means a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I do not have the DSM tattooed on my ass. So I'm not the one to answer these questions. What we need is self-love until the bad feels and mean stuff passes. Then do it again and leave the rest of us the fuck alone. I agree with that to a certain degree. I think that what we need is to, build a society that has nurturing qualities to it, that understands that as a social species we actually have to be compassionate towards those around us, and that there's ways to be, sort of profitable in that regard. Like the best example I can think of is housing the homeless. So we have a homeless population. Everywhere has a homeless population, or everywhere, of a reasonable size. Blah 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 blah. We have space for people. We could give them homes. We could give them guaranteed basic ability to survive. Right? These things seem kind of obvious, and we know that the end result of people having their basic needs met is that they generally are far less of a problem in other aspects of our society. So criminality goes down when people's basic needs are met. When people have access to things like mental health, the chances of their having violent mental health related episodes go down. Like, it's a net positive. And all of those things that we're talking about, everyone goes, well, who's going to pay for that? Well, the way you pay for it is you don't have to pay for all the other things that you have to do in place of that, like police. Not that I'm, not saying abolish police, but you can massively reduce your police spend if your population isn't all shitty to each other. Lack of conscience is frightening, infuriating. Just so you know, it's unhoused, not homeless. Sigh. PPC, UPC, MONEY in popular Disney too. UPC, or PPC, UPC, MONEY. Yes, that's well played, my friend. And yes, it is unhoused. That's one that my brain still struggles with, just because it kind of came out of left field in my universe. All of a sudden, people were being referred to as unhoused people, and old dog, got to get my head wrapped around changes in terminology. I don't think homeless is a negative term, although I've been wrong before. But unhoused is a different way of looking at it. I'm good either way. The general gist is the same. There are people who don't have access to the things that are required for the basic functions of human life, and we have the choice of continuing that, or saying, hey, that seems unnecessary. Why don't we just fix it? Locally, social worker rides with at least one cruiser for wellness checks, a start, and police budget pays for it. Oh, that's awesome. Wellness checks should be the purview of social workers and mental health experts, with support from police when necessary. And I personally think it's there are definitely times where that is necessary, but when you have no social worker involved, then every problem escalates, or almost every problem escalates. Especially with the current warrior cop model, right? Cops are being constantly reminded that they're in danger and have to react as warriors. And warriors don't walk up to someone who's having a hard time and go, "Hey, let's bring this down. Let's talk about this. Come on now." That's not warriors. Warriors fight. Oops, got it wrong. Not social worker, a healthcare worker. Yeah, and a healthcare worker, perfectly fine if they have those training or that kind of training, right? So presumably mental health and stuff like that. Health, not enforcement. Health, not social. Ultimately, when you're dealing with a wellness check, you're talking about looking in on someone to determine if they are alive and well or not. And so, to my mind, that means one of two possible things. That means someone who is, has physical or mental problems that are requiring an immediate reaction. So, a health practitioner makes sense. A social worker makes sense in the sense that most of the calls, I think, are related to mental health as opposed to physical health. I don't think a lot of people go, I haven't heard from Dave in a while. I wonder if he suddenly got, a liver explosion. I think we're mostly, sending people going, I hope that Dave hasn't hung himself, or I hope that Dave isn't, going down some ugly mental spirals. That said, there are people who have fallen, broken a hip, and a wellness check is what saves their life. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who it is, as long as that person is someone who can fill that role and fill that void. I see that I'm having some challenges with my connection. I hope it's not too crappy. I'm on Wi-Fi because I have people sleeping in my other room. Doesn't look like drop frames are too terribly high, but my kilobytes per second seem to be wavering. So hopefully this is not getting all choppy and crappy. But either way, I'm going to take a break. It's time. When I get back, we'll talk about the cops, the popo, the fuzz, the boys in blue, the thin blue line. But in the meantime, I'm going to put the thing on my face. I'm going to play a little Bryan Adams, fake Bryan Adams, from my cruel internal Bryan Adams brain. And I'll be right back. Oh, gotta mute my mic. Hey, I am back. Let me get the thing off my face. I keep saying if you notice I'm having a severely bad day, call an ambulance. I don't care if they bring the police. I just don't want them to be alone. Yeah, absolutely, right? And it's funny because, like, we should know how to do this in other aspects of our experience. If I, want software developed, I hire a programmer. I don't hire a person who doesn't know computers. Cops are not the answer, and they're the answer that we've got because conservatives, especially in this province, but I'm sure the world over, conservatives have a nasty habit of slashing budgets for everything cool in the world, and the end result of that is that you have no money for healthcare, you have no money for mental health, you have no money for social programs, so the people who are benefited by those systems don't have places to go, don't have resources, and all of those problems scale up in their magnitude until such time as they become social problems, which is, it turns out, really shitty, and we only know how to deal with those with police if we don't have any other solution. And police, meanwhile, are being warrior cop to death, and they're not handling these things well, so they shouldn't. Which is the whole thing that I wanted to talk about my take on the police. I often will be quoted as saying all cops are bad, and I do believe that. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. It's very true. I don't really think that the role of policing is negative. I think there is an absolutely necessary role for policing. I don't believe in abolishing the police. I do believe in changing the funding model of police and the funding model of society in general, because the funding model of our society is to invest heavily in law enforcement and create laws to keep the people in line, which I am actually opposed to as a libertarian. And to me, that's a net negative, right? When you have a situation like, where you have large percentages of your population in some aspect of the legal system, or large percentages of subsets of your population. Here in Canada, our prisons and our prison system pretty heavily leans towards the fact that we might have some problems dealing with Indigenous people properly. As an example, in the States, it's I think the Indigenous people in the States have a similar problem, but it's overshadowed by Black people in the States, because the population of Black people in the States is higher percentage-wise, I believe, than in Canada. But essentially, both systems are designed to make it real hard to live a life that is free if you're at the what the sort of white wealthy majority consider the bottom parts of society, whatever that looks like. So we went through the Klein era, we went through Reaganomics in the States, and basically slashed all of the funding for a variety of things and gave it all to the police. Because there's a necessity for dealing with these problems, and it's easier to just give it to the police than to have a working healthcare, have a working mental health system, have a working social work program, take care of people. Now, I keep dwelling on the fact that we're a social animal, and that's actually a good thing, that we're a social animal and that we look after ourselves and our society around us. That's how it works. And when it starts to break down is when people start gaming the system, right? The fact that CEOs make these ridiculous profits is a gaming of the system for personal power and glory and freedom and joy, and it always comes at the expense of other people. That ain't cool to me. That is an anti-societal move, and I would gladly go on the record as saying that if you believe that your role is to absorb as much of the good of society as possible and to therefore pull it away from the majority of the people, well, then you, sir, are an ass fuck and should probably stop doing that thing. Not that there's anything wrong with ass fucking. It's just the word that came out of my mouth. Series of profanities. That's all that matters. It could have just as easily been ear thistle. When I hear people talk about defunding the police, I think it's an important thing, but I think that we've talked about the fact that the branding of it is a little bit unfortunate, because you want a pithy slogan like defund the police, but then when people hear it, they go, so you want to have no police? And that's not necessarily true. There are people in the defund movement who absolutely want police abolition and prison abolition. I don't believe in those things. I believe that if we look honestly at our society, there are always going to be people who live outside of it. I remember we had, when we were talking about the traditional indigenous justice process, and one of the punishments was shunning. Well, shunning doesn't work in this society. In a society where you are, a smaller group of people, and your existence within that group of people is kind of closely associated with your ability to survive, then shunning is very effective, because you're being cast out of the tribe, or whatever word we use for it, and left to your own devices, and that's probably not going to be enough to survive and thrive. But in our society, that is not an option, because we can't really shun someone. If you say, you're kicked out, you're kicked out of what? The city? Okay, you go to the next city. You know what I mean? Like, shunning only works if you see value of or need to belong. That's true in our current state, right? If being a part of is important to you, then shunning is effective. But from using the example of that indigenous justice, where shunning would actually mean that the you have no one to work with to survive, and as a social animal, you now have to take on every aspect of your care and feeding, and you probably can't, and you probably die. Punishment doesn't seem to work much better. I agree. I think that I get where people come from in terms of wanting a society where the bad people are punished for the bad they do, so that they learn and do good, except that that's not really what we see in a large percentage of penalizations. People who are poor and who, for example, become drug dealers to survive and thrive, when they go to jail for dealing drugs, they get out, and we've now removed a whole bunch of the options that may have been available to them. It becomes harder to get a job. It becomes harder to blah, 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 blah. And you wind up basically being, hands tied. I guess I'm going to sell drugs because that's how I know how to survive. This is why I'm in favor of vastly changing how we approach criminality and how we approach, what is good and what is bad. If I was the boss of the world, drugs would all be legal. And processes for getting drugs would be controlled through access to pharma for the most part. Obviously, I'm fine with non-wackadoo sized drug things being available and accessible to people if they want them, but I don't like the idea that if you want to get heroin, you shouldn't have to go to some sketchy heroin dealer. You should be able to go to your doctor and say, I need to refill my prescription for heroin. And the doctor goes, okay, just so you know, we do have options. Want to talk about it, that kind of stuff. I think there's I'm obviously being very dismissive there, but creating a society where we punish people for doing the things, especially most of those drug and alcohol related things and vagrancy and all of this, a lot of them are just dealing with the outfalling of being in a capitalist society, right? We drink or we do drugs to heal the pain These are things. In some cases, literally, we don't have access for financial reasons to pain management, like legitimate pain management. And the pain management we have is highly addictive. So, like, why is that criminal? Protecting weaker folks with a police service and enforcement on predators makes sense. How do you know the difference? Jail is literally an education system. We don't seem to understand that. Education system, I'm not. Oh, education for criminality. I think that's what you're saying. Yes, I would agree with that. And I would say that our approach to jail has been punitive, and it needs instead to be rehabilitative. And we talk about that, but we don't really do it. As far as the difference between protecting the weaker folks with a police service and enforcing predators, yeah, that is the role that we should have for police, is to keep the peace and also, protect people from the villainy that is in the world. So you're gonna have things like murderers. There's obviously plenty of times where murder is done for different reasons than poverty. And so if you, let's just say, you could snap your fingers and end poverty, you're not going to end murder. You're going to end the murders that relate to the problems that come from life in poverty. Murder itself is not going to go away. There are still going to be bad people. So you still have to have a method for protecting people from them. But if you snap your fingers and make poverty go away, you have less things that you have to, or less murderers that you have to deal with. Do human rights trump all other rights? I don't know for sure what you mean by that. For example, the right of animals to clean air and water, and the right to exist. Segue, ignore the errant thought. No, it's a good thought. I quite like it because it does factor into what I'm talking about. I would say that human rights trump all other rights? And by that you're referring to things like the rights of animals or what have you. I would say that from our selfish perspective, they kind of do. But if we approach human rights in a way that is thoughtful and like we address social problems and stuff, I think that we actually lower our negative impact on the rest of the animals' rights. So using the example of the unhoused population, see, I got it that time. Using the example of the unhoused population, if we were to nationalize the property owners and just say, property is now owned by the state and everyone is entitled to a space that is clean and safe and stuff. We have the space for that. Like, easily we have the space for that. We just aren't choosing to do that with it because we are stuck in a capitalist society where we value the money that can be siphoned off from people for access to a clean living space. But if we had everybody having a home, all of a sudden, your organized government type people are the ones that are in charge of the management of that, then developers aren't constantly building farther and farther out. You can actually localize where people are living and make sure that the living there is good and worthwhile. These are just examples, but in terms of the question, I would say that on a wider scale, human rights don't trump all other rights, right? We are grossly overpopulated, and we don't have a right to just continue to do that at the expense of the planet, because the planet is going to tell us to fuck right off in no uncertain terms, and it's going to win. We are a privileged species, similar to white privilege in human society. Is it about rights and lifting up / tolerance, or is it about just privilege and can we what we can do with it? Not sure why this where this is going, frankly. It's an interesting question, right? The selfishness has led humanity to where we are. The idea that we still need to have gigantic families, for example, when that has shown to not be the case. Because infant mortality is far less, childhood mortality is far less. We don't require gigantic families just to make sure that, 2 of our kids survive and can thrive. And we're unconsciously addressing this by the reduction in birth rate, which is not part of some great cabal secret. It's literally people going, I don't need to have that many kids, so I'm just not gonna. Or I'm gonna have no kids at all. As a result, we're kind of accidentally reining ourselves in that regard. And I think that this is what social species do. The selfishness that has led us to our overpopulation is being corrected by the selfishness of us not wanting to have the cost associated with a gigantic family, for example. Or is this simply evolution in action and yet another experiment looking for survival traits? I mean, it's evolution in action in the sense that evolution is an unguided process. There is no hand at the wheel. We just get the ability to do stuff. And one could argue, although I think this is a little more like Evo psyche, that the act of being selfish is something that has been essentially rewarded evolutionarily. So I don't know if there's like if you could design an experiment to show that selfishness is a potentially positive act of evolution. I don't have an answer to that, but it is an interesting thought experiment, right? If we are doing things to make ourselves thrive and make ourselves powerful, we are essentially placing ourselves in a position where we will have more access to procreate, more access to, whatever, and for our genes to pass on. So there is something to that, I think. Perhaps this planet is in a galaxy of thousands of billions of planets, and a universe of trillions of galaxies and associated planets is but a molecule. Ergo, our ego is the enemy. Yeah, I've had that sort of brain thought before. What if the planet that we're on is nothing more than like a neutron in a gigantic body? When I was a kid, I used to be like, maybe that's God's body. Now that I don't believe in God, I'm like, maybe that's just not a thing. I don't think ultimately we can grasp the nature of the universe, and all we can really do is grasp how we're doing and how we need to do. And I think we need to do better. I think that capitalism is failing us, and that we have to be smart about how we address it. That doesn't mean let's have a communist revolution and shit like that. I do not want that either. But I think that we have to recognize that taking care of our society is kind of the whole point. To boil it down, pain sucks. Yeah, pain. Survival of the fittest, or the most adaptable through unguided expression of genes, DNA / whatever. Yeah, and that's sort of the inherent gotcha with evolution is because it doesn't have a guiding force behind it. It's not intelligent design. We wind up in a scenario where what is positive may not actually be positive. And usually the system kind of balances itself out. So, for example, our desire to have gigantic families should balance out by mortality rates and things like that. But we have constructed a world through our brilliant super brains where those forces kind of don't really apply as much as they used to. So we're not being eaten by bears on the same level that we once were. We're not being trampled by the wild herds on the plains. All of that shit just ain't happening, and as a result, we're not dying, but we continue to have large families, or we have historically continued to have large families, placing greater strain on the world. And evolutionarily, the lack of a limiting factor results in essentially an infinite feedback loop. And I think it's interesting, and I'd like to understand better how our current state of things like the lowering birth rate and all of that actually factors into on an evolutionary perspective. I guess from a if you consider strengths and weaknesses, a family unit today is stronger if it is smaller, because the ability to pay for a large family, kind of the world over, is more and more difficult. So there is a social reward to not having a large family, and to thus reducing the overall population. And that's maybe why we're seeing that happen in the declining birth rates, essentially the world over. As soon as a country industrializes, their birth rate just goes, pew, because we can. Another perspective is the aquarium or terrarium or the ant farm. Limited resources and eventually population kills them all. We don't have a group mind or collective intelligence to figure this out. Or do we? Yes, we call it Google. The concept of, if you have no natural predators, no natural predation, no natural sickness, no natural blah, blah, blah. If you can live in an aquarium or a terrarium or an ant farm, eventually you will breed yourself into non-existence. Eventually your society will collapse. And that's probably a bad thing. That's why we have to change our perspective on things. So when we talk about replacement rates, I'm good with the idea that replacement rate is not something that we're hitting, because we don't need to. The world does not need 8 billion people on it, or 10 billion people, or 100 billion people on it. In fact, that's probably a bad choice. The world needs a lot less humans. Anthropologists talk about numbers, and I wouldn't pretend to know what they are. But I've had this conversation with a buddy of mine who's an anthropologist. And, when they do run models and stuff to how many humans should there be, it's a far smaller number than we're used to thinking about. Wow, smaller number. So having our population drop is probably a good thing, but it requires change in our society. According to the suppositories, we need 150 million Canadians to keep growth and competitiveness and productivity going. Sigh. Yeah, that's and there are models that absolutely agree with that, 100%. If you take as writ that we need to continue to economically be viable, and that requires a certain percentage of the population to actively be engaged in the various kinds of work, you can come up with a number like 150 million that is absolutely necessary, and that model makes sense, right? But that doesn't mean it's mathematically accurate. The only good Tory is in fact a suppository. Ron Desantis. Yes, that's true. And in fact, I feel very confident in saying that most of my adult life I've had Tories' heads shoved up my ass, inspecting for all the nooks and crannies. So yes, they are fantastic at that. That's a funny image, I have to say. The reality is, I think that if we don't do something, we will fail. And it will be catastrophic. Now, it doesn't mean the end of human life necessarily, although we sure are moving that direction, thanks, oil. But it does mean that the West could fall, or any number of similar shit outcomes could happen. And I think that we saw this coming in the days of Teddy Roosevelt's New Deal. Was it Teddy's New Deal? Pretty sure it was. But yeah, the New Deal was about, oh fuck, this whole unmanaged capitalism thing ends badly, and it's gonna end if we don't do something. If we don't start acting like a social species. This is why I am a socialist. I do not believe in, a small group of extraordinarily powerful autocrats crushing their, voices of opposition under their boot heel. That is not socialism. Socialism involves us all working together for the common goal. And I believe we can construct a system that is smarter than the implementations of left-leaning societies in days gone by. And I think that the only reason we don't is because right now there are so many voices screeching about how all socialist thought is essentially wrong, because who's going to pay for it, and also China, Russia, and also do you want to live under the boot heel of George Orwell? But that like assumes that there's only one way to do it. We're a clever fucking species. We have the capacity to creatively problem solve and come up with better answers. And it's about changing the narrative. And the narrative's like, it's amazing what we can do. If you think about what happened with smoking, compare smoking with guns, right? So right now, guns are a fucking problem. And they're a fucking problem because we have a toxic culture, and that's Canada, that's the United States, that's kind of everywhere, but Canada less so, the United States more so, are sort of the poster boys of this, right? Americans love guns, and fuck yeah, they love guns. And you know what? I love guns. I think guns are fucking fun. I don't own a gun. We've talked about this. But I don't have a problem with guns. I have a problem with the way we are interacting with guns, and the way that we're promoting guns as a viable solution for like all kinds of problems. That's not a good thing. When we talk about smoking, everyone used to smoke. Like, my mom was a non-smoker. She's never smoked a day in her life. And people thought she was a weirdo. You know, there was a time when not being a smoker was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And now it's exactly the opposite. So what changed? Well, we recognized that smoking wasn't as cool as we thought it was. It had some serious drawbacks. Things like, cancer. And so we began a process to change the perspective of people on smoking. Same thing with the auto industry. It used to be that cars were fucking death traps. We recognized, thanks to Ralph Nader, that maybe this was not a good idea and we needed to make some changes. And we changed the way we think about safety in the automobile industry. We changed the way we think about tobacco and its role in society and human life. We need to do this with guns. We need to take the time to stop glamorizing guns as problem-solving mechanisms, guns as self-defense, guns as everything. They have a role in all of that, and that's not going to change. But by glamorizing it, by constantly doing the whole, like, hey man, guns are the only way out of all of the awful things in the world, we're kind of fucking ourselves. And don't get me wrong, I've been known to fuck myself, but in this case, on a societal level, it's not a good answer. It's not a good look. The narrative is key there, because we can't stop people from owning guns just by saying, well, we're legislatively going to pass a rule. That's not cool. It's not good. There are valid uses for guns, and we wind up in this scenario where people are gonna fight about and be very upset about anything that says stop having guns, because there's a threat to your individual liberty and a threat to your ability to protect your all of the things that guns can do. And I get that. And that's why we need to say, hey, there's other ways of doing that, and there's other ways of doing that societally are beneficial. So I'm not going to take away your guns. I'm going to hopefully work to take away your desire for guns. Or reduce the desire for guns. Reduce the idea that guns are the first and foremost answer when any question comes up, like cops, right? You don't need to send a cop for a wellness check. You don't need a gun to get someone off your lawn in a world where people have put less importance on having a gun. It's just a thing. We survived just fine for millennia without just randomly murdering people on the off chance that they disagree with us. That was it's a healthy sound. So smoking's good, Ugh. I'm also dealing with the allergies right now. We had the overnight sudden dump of snow, and that always kills my allergies. You can tell by my sexy, sexy voice. But yeah, I think the problem that we're faced with right now ultimately is that we're just not fucking thinking about things. We're not using our noodles, right? That is the thing that made us the top of the fucking food chain, and we're not doing that. We're failing miserably in that regard, and it's sort of stupid and bad. We can, like, look at any topic. So, we were talking about energy reliance and global warming and all that shit. At the end of the day, the easiest answer on earth is you look at it and say, this is bad. It's possible that we're entirely wrong about global warming and that there's nothing we can do and that this is just the normal processes of the world. But if we're wrong, we're dooming ourselves. So what is the threat of us not using petroleum products? Well, it's very minimal. The threat is we wasted a lot of money for no reason. And the world's just going to keep doing the world. Okay, that's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is if global warming is a very real thing and human use of things like petroleum products is causing it, the best case scenario is that we stop it, or we at least, reduce the impact on people and on animals and all the, like the earth and all that shit. Okay. So on one side, you can either fix a really serious, like, society-ending threat, or worst case scenario, you just spend some money. That's an easy answer. You go, well, we'll do the spending money thing, right? Money is bullshit anyways. It doesn't exist. It's a concept. So use that concept. But instead, we have this mind frame or this perspective of, I have to win capitalism. So changing costs money. Improving costs money. Fixing costs money. Doing the same old fucking thing, well, I'm good at that. It costs money to drill oil, but it's a hell of a lot less money to continue to drill oil than it is to invest in understanding alternative technologies. So as long as we have this capitalism monster sort of prodding us forward, we aren't going to fix these problems. Or we'll take tiny little baby steps where we can't afford to do that. That was the thing about the New Deal, was it was not something that people were happy about. A lot of people were very, very fucking pissed off when the New Deal came through. When we talk about the Green New Deal, the same reaction. People are freaking out because, who's going to pay for it? How are we going to do this? This is an impossible thing. You know what was impossible? Setting foot on the fucking moon. But we did it. We did it because we just said, you know what? Let's pretend for a minute it's not impossible. How would we do it? So let's pretend for a moment that global warming isn't guaranteed to be the thing that's going to wipe us out. How do we get in front of it? How do we stop it? Well, there's a bunch of answers. We're going to have to come up with a solution for our energy consumption. We're going to have to come up with a solution for overpopulation. And no, I don't mean genocide, and no, I don't mean forced birth rates. I mean leaning into the fact that it's okay that we're not having giant families. Changing the narrative so that giant families are not something that the majority of people want, which we're already unconsciously doing. So coming up with a solution for energy, coming up with a solution for the other sides of petroleum use. So lubes, greases, et cetera, ad nauseum, diaper shit, all of that, right? There are other things that we can use to meet those same things. Family unit, like money, is just a concept. Yep, absolutely. Everything ultimately, a human family versus my family. Yep. I have a biological family that I love, and I am at least in some instances close to, and in other instances not so much. Obviously, I'm close to my children. I'm less close to my parents, although I love them. Farther and farther apart from the various other relations, to the point where Some of them exist and I don't care about them. And I don't mean that in a shitty way. I mean, like, I have second and third cousins. I don't know anything about them. I'm sure they're living lives. They're not important to me. And if a second cousin or third cousin came to me and said, Jim, I need your help, the fact that they're a second or third cousin wouldn't mean shit to me. What would mean shit to me is, hey, is there a thing that I can do to help? And is this going to be something that I can do and can afford to take on emotionally, financially, whatever the case may be? Because that's just the kind of person I is. But the fact that we have some chromosomes in common doesn't mean shit to me. I have a very different perspective on family than many people because of the life that I've lived. I think family is important, but I think we also way overblow the importance of family. And that idea of having a family of a certain size just never made sense to me. I never wanted a large family. I have a large family because I had many children, and so clearly, made some choices along the way. But I never saw myself having a large family at all. Mostly because I came from a small family and that felt normal. There are people who don't want to have babies of their own and will still have a family because we create a family for ourselves based on the people that we surround ourselves with, right? So I have many brothers and sisters that are not biologically related to me, and who I will, do great things for if the opportunity is presented and the ability is there. And I don't think that I'm particularly unique or super cool in that regard. I think we all have that to at least some level or another. Our chosen family, as it's often referred to, are people that we will do great things for. We need more humans like we need more cattle for a use. To some of us, humans are just cattle. Yes, when you get high enough up, that is exactly the case. I've brought this up a million times, but this thing that I once heard, and again, I have no idea if this is valid or not, but I had heard that China was doing a big pro-smoking campaign. Now, I don't have any reason to believe or disbelieve it, but from a conversational perspective, it's an interesting one. The argument presented to me was, I can't believe evil China is promoting the use of cigarettes, and isn't that awful, and aren't they the terrible worst ever in the whole wide world? And I was like, well, that depends entirely on your perspective. If you are the small group who are in charge of maintaining a population of 1 billion plus people, then yeah, they are just cattle. And when you look at it from that macro lens, you have a necessity to care about things like death rate. You have a necessity to care about things like your economy. Your economy cannot forever sustain people who are no longer, due to age, no longer capable of actively contributing in a real way to that economic monster. So you say, well, then we want to have less people at that level. How do you do that? Well, smoking is an example. You introduce things that will make people's life expectancy reduce. At the same time, you're also garnering the benefit of your economy by improving the amount of farming that you're doing. From a macro perspective, these are perfectly reasonable perspectives. From a micro perspective, you are actively saying, hey, I want you to smoke because I know it will kill you, and that's not all right. When we say that we need 150 million people in Canada to live, thrive, and survive as a country, we're looking at it from a macro level, not from a micro level. And from a macro level, it makes sense, based on the model that they're using. I would argue that we don't need to have, cities of millions of people. I would argue that we don't need to take up as much space as we do in the greater scheme of things, and that the society that we have eventually landed on, the one that has all of this technology, we actually could dramatically reduce our population, dramatically reduce our amount of space consumed, and have better lives. But I would want those to be things essentially done through a more natural perspective of, we begin looking after ourselves, and we have people choosing to have smaller families and all that kind of shit. Cool, Smoking in China. Let's just take a look because I have no idea. Like I say, I've never dug into whether that's a real thing or not. Let's find out together. We're going to jump to some Wikipedia. Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button. There we go. Alright, I'm going to paste that link in and then I'll switch views so we can all follow along together. Alright, smoking in China. Smoking in China is prevalent as the People's Republic is the world's largest consumer and producer of tobacco. There are 350 million Chinese smokers, and China produces 42% of the world's cigarettes. The China National Tobacco Corporation, which has a name that I cannot possibly pronounce, is by sales the largest single manufacturer of tobacco products in the world and boasts a monopoly in mainland China, generating between 7 and 10% of government revenue. Within the Chinese Guangxi system, tobacco is still a ubiquitous gift acceptable on any occasion, particularly outside urban areas. Tobacco control legislation does exist, but public enforcement is rare to non-existent outside the most highly internationalized cities such as Shanghai and Beijing. Furthermore, outside the largest cities in China, smoking is considered socially acceptable anywhere at any time, even if it is technically illegal. The Chinese Association on Tobacco Control is engaged in tobacco control by members of the voluntary sector, including academic, social, and mass organizations, as strong enforcement of existing tobacco control laws is not supported by the Chinese government. Yang Gongwan, and pardon me for probably saying that wrong, deputy director of the National Center of Disease Control of China, said that progress on tobacco control is not moving quickly because the government derives large tax revenues from tobacco sales and the industry employs a large workforce. The ministry said that as a midterm goal, all health administrations in half of the country's healthcare facilities should be smoke-free by the end of 2010. As of 2009, nearly 60% of male Chinese doctors are smokers, which is the highest proportion in the world. China does not have laws to punish healthcare facilities, medical workers, and health officials who violate smoking bans and instead rely on the Chinese media to act as a watchdog. Smoking is a social custom in the PRC, and giving cigarettes at any social interaction is a sign of respect and friendliness. That's interesting. I did not know any of that, and I think that is pretty fascinating stuff. As a smoker, I can say that I totally value the fact that smoking is being more and more demonized and more presented as a stupid thing to do that only the bad guys in the films do. And again, there's a very, very real correlation that can be drawn to the story that I'd heard and the story that we're talking about from reading that on Wikipedia. And of course, Wikipedia is not the be-all and end-all of knowledge. However, it probably is fairly factual in this case. So it seems very likely that China continues to, at the very least, not denigrate smoking. And as a result, they still have a large population of smokers. This doesn't come as a shock to me at all. And the comment made in the Wikipedia article that a vast chunk of government tax revenue comes from tobacco, I think that's also true in the West, although I would assume that that's lessening and that they're probably getting more revenue at this point from marijuana and from alcohol than from anything else. But this is again, that macro versus micro. From a macro view, you say, well, we've got a giant population and we have a huge workforce employed in the tobacco industry. Makes sense. That is, us pointing at that and being all agog at the evil of it is the same as us not recognize, or is corollary to us knowing that we have a gigantic population that are involved in the production of oil and gas and the industry around that, the petroleum industry, and not wanting to step away from that because of the financial burden when we know that it is killing us. Interesting. So yeah, that was very interesting. I like that. And it's an interesting corollary, and I think the answer is changing the narrative. Changing the ideas that we have in our heads. If God and Jeebus were to say smoking is wrong and evil, I'd probably be lighted up right now already. I totally get that. I can safely tell you that if smoking was, if there was no health detriment to smoking, I probably would never quit. The fact that there is a health detriment to smoking means that I'm going to have to eventually fucking, quit smoking. I'm going to have to eventually not be a giant piece of shit and get over myself and quit smoking. I haven't done it yet. It'll happen. But I like the fact that I live in a country where I can make the very dumb choice to smoke, but that freedom is there. I have the right to do so. And I don't support the idea of a country where, even for the best of intentions, the government says, for example, that smoking is bad and it costs us money and it's shitty, so we're just going to ban it, and if you smoke, we will murder you or put you in a gulag. That's shitty. It goes against my libertarian nature. But also, I recognize that I have my own social responsibility to not put myself in a position where I am burdening the greater society. So I probably ought to quit fucking smoking as a good social animal, not doing a thing that directly and negatively affects my society by having me get lung cancer and cost loads of money of the public coffers to pay for. I stopped smoking when my kids were born. I never quit. I stopped, and it wasn't easy or noble, but between the cost per month and health impact in the house on children with immune system challenges, I had to. I actually, I quit smoking, I think it was when my eldest was about 2-ish. And I quit smoking for 8 years. And it's interesting because that was exactly why I quit smoking. I did not want to smoke around my children. I wanted to protect them from those things that I was doing. I saw no reason to expose my kids to that, and so I struggled a little bit, and eventually I was able to quit smoking. And so what happened to make me start again? Well, let's just see. I was now living far away from my children. I was divorced, or divorcing. I don't remember whether I was all the way divorced at the time, but I think I was. And I was miserable, and alone, and sad, and depressed, and had a whole lot of pain I needed to self-medicate. And this was all in the back of my head, my brain going, hey, just fucking smoke, who cares? And I did. And here we are. But yeah, I think the more that we understand about smoking, the more that people will do that, where they say, I don't want my kids to see me smoking. I don't want my kids to be around my smoke. I think that's normal and good. I would hope that people get there with things like smoking weed. Whatever gives you joy, man. Whatever gives you joy. Yeah. I wouldn't say, this is the problem. I wouldn't say that cigarettes give me joy. I would say they give me exactly the opposite of joy. People will say, all the time to me, hey, how was that cigarette? And it's like, it tasted like shit. What did you think? That these were suddenly going to become good? Like, at the end of the day, smoking is fucking gross. And that's just life. Hey, Moria, it's good to see you. Moria, am I saying your name at all remotely correctly? You should put the phonetics in so that I can understand how to say it properly. I feel the same way about heroin. Get it from a doctor makes sense to me. Yeah, to me, if you have, there's gonna be drugs. There's gonna be alcohol. There's gonna be all these things. Prohibition, famously not a successful policy. Oh, good. I'm glad that it's fine. I just don't want to be that guy that's hey, and saying your name all dumb. Those things are going to exist in our society, and there's a reason that they exist in our society, and there's a reason that we have social problems with them. For example, heroin is often something that people turn to for pain management, whether internal, mental pain or physical pain or whatever. And in our recent years has been a serious thing that people have turned to as a sort of desperate act to do pain management, because they've been essentially given pain medications by the medical establishment, and then told that they don't get any more. That's a fairly commonplace thing. people are gonna do those drugs. So we can tut about it and be like, oh, that's terrible that those drugs exist. Or we can build a society where we say, okay, how do we best protect the people who are using those drugs, and how do we best ensure the best possible outcome for them, the most potential access to resources for getting off of them, all of that kind of stuff. And so, if you're buying heroin from your doctor, that's a much better scenario than buying it off of the kid who lives down the block, who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a cartel. Like, I see a difference between those two models. And I think if we look at things from an objective pain, and we say, okay, we have social issues. How do we deal with them? What is the best way to deal with them? And then build a society accordingly. We have a huge amount of empty space in my city, and a huge number of people who don't have access to empty space. That's pretty simple fucking math. And yeah, it's not as easy as just saying, okay, well, homeless people go live in a building. But it's not much harder than that, right? You have to construct do so with processes and thoughtfulness, but you can do that. But the kid down the block, backed by the cartel and local gang, really is selling known quality, safe product, laissez-faire capitalism at its finest. And did you say really? Or yeah, it really is. That's probably not true. They're probably selling some shitty stuff. In fact, I remember probably like a decade ago in Vancouver, people were like overdosing on heroin left, right, and center. And the reason was they'd gotten a shipment of heroin from Asia that was like 80% pure, and we were just not used to 80% pure heroin. So people were like doing what they thought was their normal dose of heroin and fucking dying because we're so used to the shitty garbage that people were getting at the time. So there is some reality there. It's one of the reasons I like the legalized weed thing. I can go as a person who almost never smokes weed, and I'm fucking shitty at smoking the weed that everyone else smokes. Everyone loves the like super brutal smoke it and your brain goes to zero. You're literally barely able to keep your face on. Everyone loves that shit. I can't stand it. I remember the weed of my youth, where you would get a joint weed cigarette and you would smoke it and you would giggle a bunch and you would probably have a whole bunch of creative energy and you would clean your house and write a short story and giggle the whole way through, and it was awesome. Like, that's the experience that I wanted out of weed, and that's why I quit doing weed for I quit using marijuana for a long time, because when I would smoke it, I would just be like, oh, which is not fun for me. I'm sure I've told it before, but the day I realized I needed to stop smoking weed was I was over at a person I knew's house. They were having a gathering of people to watch America's Next Top Model. And I was just bored and lonely, so I was like, yeah, I'll come over. And they're passing around a bong or something, and I took a hoot, and hit me real fucking, right in the brain pan. And I'm watching America's Next Top Model, and I can't follow the program. It's way too complex for me. And then I was like, wait a second. This is America's Next Top fucking Model. Like, if you can't follow this, you're bad at drugs, and you should not do drugs anymore. And so I stopped. And it was the right answer. And since then, I have, on occasion, I will go and get myself some of the marijuana weeds, and I'll smoke it quite contentedly, because I can go to a store near my house and go, I kind of like the shitty, I like sativa, and I like low grade, not gonna knock me on my ass, so I'm gonna buy this one. And it's pleasant, and it is much more like the weed that I had when I was a kid. If you could do that with other things, that just makes sense. If you go to a doctor and say, I want heroin, and your doctor says, you know what, you're on 70% pure, 6 needles a day, whatever, why don't we scale that back? That's cool. You know what the kid in the alley down the street who's backed by the gang and the cartel, you know what he never does? Encourages you to quit. Encourages you to ease up. Unless he's annoyed at you. You're not going to get that advice. It's always, I'm making money, I'm happy. That's capitalism, baby. That is, in fact, that is libertarian capitalism. If the government can't stop you from doing it, and you're just going to continue to sell that heroin, you're going to sell someone more and more and more until they die. That is a good model of what the end result of capitalism is. And that's kind of a funny realization when you think about it. All right, I'm going to take another break, and when I get back, we can either talk more or we can karaoke. I'm good either way. We'll figure that out. Talk amongst yourselves. Use the old chat box there, and I will be back shortly with more stuff of things. Where's my music? There it is. Okay, I'm going to put on a different song because I feel like making you guys over and over again listen to Bryan Adams is terrible. So we're gonna put on, let's do the Faster Kitty Fuck, which is the song in 9/4 that I wrote using my computer. And I'll put the thing on my bass. back in that New York groove, as they say. Let's see. But the kid, Danielle Smith, there I said it. No one defends minority rights better, all of them. No, really. She's a defender of the faith. Yeah, Danielle's neat. She's... I don't know what kind of conservative she is. I don't know if she's a social conservative or a libertarian conservative or a Christian conservative or whatever, but she scares the shit out of me. And that might be a good song. Let me see if I can find that, because that would make me giggle if I could do that. I'm not seeing it. Damn, I was thinking like, you scare the shit out of me. Would have been a good giggle. So what do we want to do, chat? Do we want to keep chatting? Do we want to do some karaoke? What do we want to do? I'm open. I'll give you a second to weigh in. While I drink this delightful Maxwell House medium or dark roast. Dark roast. I'm looking for psychological safety and enlightenment. I don't have either of those things. I try to be enlightened. Which brand of whiskey still will support this? I would say psychological safety and enlightenment. Which brand of whiskey? My answer will be Pendleton's, and it's based entirely on the fact that I haven't drank a lot of whiskey in the last few years, and a friend of mine told me to try Pendleton's, and it was very lovely, and I quite enjoyed it, and I feel psychologically safe when I drink it, and it makes me feel enlightened, unlike things like Jack Daniels or Wild Turkey, which the reason I didn't drink a lot of whiskey is because they're not that tasty. We used to have Jack Daniels as a sponsor for a lot of the beer course stuff that we used to do. And I remember one year, the year that just before the Honey Jack came out, our rep was sponsoring the award show that we were doing. We did an award show every year. And the rep smuggled up across the border, because the Tennessee Honey was available in the States but not in Canada yet. He smuggled up a couple of bottles. It was right before it became available. Smuggled up a couple bottles, and they were part of the stage experience. So being on stage for the award show, I ended up doing a bunch of different shots. And my reaction to it was, it tasted kind of like being orally assaulted by a very awful breakfast. I'm not a fan of honey whiskey at all. But it was cool to like, I had the first shot of it in Canada, probably not, but like, out of that bottle, me and the other host, we had the first shots, and we were like, ooh, that's some delicious whiskey, because, they're sponsoring, you have to lie. Yeah, not a big fan of the Jack or the Wild Turkey or the Jim Beam or whatever. I don't drink a lot of whiskey. I actually, if I'm going to drink something that's not beer, it's probably rum and dark rum from, like, at least, quote unquote, from somewhere Caribbean-ish. I don't drink the Jose Cuervo's. Is that rum? That's not rum. That Jose Cuervo's is tequila. I saw the Rumquila. I don't drink like the Bacardi or the Lambs or whatever, because those are just basically chemical concoctions that taste moderately like rum. But you can get all kinds of really lovely rums, and it's quite nice. Gin and almost anything recently age-related, that could very well be age-related. I've never been a gin drinker. The last time I can think of drinking gin did not go well for me. It was well past the after-hours point at a bar I was at, and I think it was my birthday. It wasn't my most recent birthday. The bar is no longer a bar. But someone had the idea of doing, they called it like Winnipeg shooters or something like this. And it was a Corona with a shot of gin in it. And you were supposed to chug it from the Corona bottle. And I had already had plenty of the drinking under my belt that night. And this seemed like a good idea. And I got maybe like a quarter of the way through the bottle before stopping and then violently puking. It was not good. I'm not a gin guy. That said, I haven't drank a lot of gin, so it's entirely possible that juniper is my spirit beverage, and I would want to do that. You'll love this Wine Searcher Bacardi Gold Rum Tequila. Oh God, is it like literally rum mixed with tequila? I'm terrified. I'm gonna click this link and we're gonna check it out. Where's my browser view? There we go. Bacardi Cyclone Gold Rum infused with tequila. Yes, I'm going to accept all of the cookies. It's only $23 for a bottle, which does not bode well. Critic tasting note. Made from Puerto Rican rum, lime juice, and agave tequila. First sniffings are dominated by the tart perfume of fresh squeezed lime juice. Aeration heightens the lime juice intensity. Palate entry is dry, herbal, and mid-palate. It's obvious that the rum is merely a base for the tequila lime juice combo. Nothing about that feels good to me. I like rum, and I like good tequila. This is the thing. I always thought that I hated tequila, and then I was doing sound at a gig, helping out a friend of mine. I am not a sound guy, but it was a pretty basic gig, and my buddy he needed the night off he had his own show, so he asked me to take over sound duties for the night. And it was a gig with a tequila tasting, and it was like an actual company from Mexico that were branching into Canada and wanted to sort of get their tequila in front of people. The guy came up and he's like, as they're going towards the bar to do the tequila thing, he's like, "You should come." And I was like, "Not a tequila guy, homeboy." And he's like, "Just give it a shot. I'll surprise you." So I go to the bar, and he talked a little bit about the tequila, and he was like, there's actual laws in Mexico about agave and all of that kind of stuff. Ciclone is pronounced sick clone. Oh, there you go. You won't thank anyone in the morning, but you'll love it in the moment. Oh, yeah, it just doesn't feel like something I'd be down with. But anyway, so we talked a lot about the rules around agave and about how the tequilas that we typically get here in Canada are they're not Mexican tequila. They're basically, they get a certain amount of agave because you have to have a certain amount of agave to call it tequila or something along those lines, and then they add chemical stuff in to sort of make up the weight and give it the same sort of approximate taste, and that's why tequila always has a really sort of shitty grapey taste. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll try it. And he had a silver tequila and a gold tequila. And I did the shot of not shot because we weren't shooting it, but, take a sip of the gold. And the gold was nice. It wasn't my thing. The oaky flavor isn't my thing. It's gold because it's aged longer in oak barrels or something like that. And it was like, yeah, that's not as bad as I had expected. And then I tasted the silver and I was like, damn. That's really nice. I really was surprised by that. So I'm not opposed to tequila. I'm just opposed to how we typically do tequila, which is usually pretty fucking awful. It's like cognac versus brandy. Real cognac is golden. I have never had real cognac. I have never even drank brandy. I've never been a big exploratory drinker. When I was young, like 17 or whatever, a buddy of mine got a bottle of scotch, and I thought it tasted a lot like armpit and never wanted to drink it again. And every time I've encountered alcohol that wasn't mixed, like I don't drink rum straight, I'll drink like a rum and coke or rum and water or something like that. I just find it's not the vibe for me. But as I get older, I'll probably want to look more sophisticated. Baby duck. All the ducks, really. Yeah. Baby duck. I can't remember. Is baby duck? Baby duck is rum, right? I don't remember. Back alley drain as fast as you can, then run away. Yeah. I have to say, I am very, very happy with just the delightful, when I'll drink, fuck, why is my brain stopping? When I'll drink like dark rum, and you can buy dark rum from places, and it's quite lovely, and has, very interesting flavors and all that kind of stuff. I'm into that. And I think I've just drank enough of it over the years that I can kind of enjoy it a little bit more. Whiskey I can do, but things like tequila, like, because it's not a drink that you really mix with a lot of stuff. I mean, you can, but that's not how we drink it here. We're drinking shots of tequila, and then it just tastes like you got hit in the mouth with a baseball bat. Not my favorite joy, so it ain't a thing for me. Uncle Ben's Whiskey? Or winery? Oh, Uncle Ben's Winery. I have no idea. I'm assuming that Baby Duck comes from Uncle Ben's Winery or something. To me, the only Uncle Ben is obviously Peter Parker's uncle. Went through a Scotch and Stogie phase, matching a Scot to a cigar. Geologists would bring back cheap sticks. Oh, cool. I never really got into cigars either. Because I was like a heavy smoker, when I finally got a chance to smoke cigars, I was like, I tried to smoke them the proper way, but you're not inhaling. And I'd find like halfway through a cigar, I'm like, I need a cigarette. And so then I was like, well, maybe I should inhale a cigar. And that's just a fucking terrible idea. And so really what it boils down to for me is a cigar is like, I just want to put fire smoke in my face, but not get any of the goodness that, or, perceived goodness of a cigarette. So it just doesn't make sense for me. But that said, there's nothing wrong with cigars or whatever. It's just not my game. I'm much more of a beer and cigarettes guy. What can I say? I'm white trash through and through. And it works for me. I'm a happy white trash. Man, my quality of my stream is just dipping, and now it's like back up to a reasonable level. But my drop frames are 1.4%. They were 0 for the longest time. Anyways, let's do some karaoke. I'm gonna do some karaoke. I think it'll be fun, and at the very least, it'll annoy the children who are sleeping in my house, which makes me happy. All right, I found a couple of songs. Obviously, if you have any special requests, you're going to run away. You always run away when I do karaoke. That's okay. I am Canadian. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care, my friend. Yeah, I found a couple songs. We're going to start with a little REO Speedwagon. Because we can. And if you want to hear me sing something horribly, throw it in the chat there. I haven't listened to this song in so long. I think I remember it. We'll find out. I can't fight this feeling any longer. Yet I'm so afraid to let it flow. What started out as friendship has grown stronger. I only wish I had the strength to let it show. I tell myself that I can't hold out forever. I said there is no reason for my fear. I feel so secure when we're together. You give my life direction. You make everything so clear. And even as I wander, I'm keeping you in sight. You're a candle in the window on a cold, dark winter's night. I'm getting closer than I ever thought I might. fight this feeling anymore. I've forgotten what I started fighting for. It's time to bring this ship into shore. Throw away the oars forever. Such a 80s banger. Fight this feeling anymore. I've forgotten what I started fighting for. And if I have to crawl up on the floor, come crashing through your door, baby, I can't fight this feeling anymore. You can imagine slow down to this. Like, at the height of my youth, this was like a girl's gonna put her hands on your waist. And that classic 80s guitar riff. Oh. My life has been such a whirlwind since I saw you. I've been running round in circles in my mind. And it always seems that I'm following you, girl. 'Cause you take me to the places that alone I'd never find. And even as I wander, I'm keeping you in sight. You're a candle in the window on a cold, dark winter's night. And I'm getting closer than I ever thought I might. And I can't fight this feeling anymore. I've forgotten what I started fighting for. It's time to bring this ship into shore. Throw away the oars forever. And I can't fight this feeling anymore. I've forgotten what I started fighting for. And if I have to crawl upon the floor, come crashing through your door, baby, I can't fight this feeling anymore. Baby, you know deep down inside, I got a feeling only you can make go away. It's a feeling in my pants. Alright, if you thought that was a love song, the other song I pre-chose, much better love song. This is a great love song. It's called Fuck Me Ray Bradbury by Rachel Bloom. Steve called me up, said wanna hang out tonight. We can see an indie film or just grab a bite. I said, oh Steve, you're cute, but a movie's not what I need. No offense, but I'd rather stay home and read. Fuck me, Ray Bradbury, the greatest sci-fi writer in history. Oh, fuck me, Ray Bradbury. Since I was 12, I've been your number one fan. Kiss me, you illustrated man. I'll feed you grapes and dandelion wine, and we'll read a little Fahrenheit 69. You're a prolific author, Ray Bradbury. Come on, baby, I'm down on one knee. I carved our names on a Halloween tree. You write about Earthlings going to Mars, and I write about blowing you in my car. You won an Emmy Award for the screenplay adaptation of Halloween Tree. Fuck me, Ray Bradbury, the greatest sci-fi writer in history. Oh, fuck me, Ray Bradbury. S is for space, L is for love, S is for space. L is for love, S is for space. L is for love, S is for space. L is for love. Houston, we have a problem. Fuck me, Ray Bradbury, the greatest sci-fi writer in history. Oh, fuck me, Ray Bradbury. Oh, fuck me, Ray Bradbury, the greatest sci-fi writer in history. 'Cause when you fuck me, Ray Bradbury, something wicked this way will come. 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 And by come, I mean ejaculate on a book. Perfect little love song. Am I right? Oh shit, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I'm not doing some fucking Sweet Child of Mine. Although let's do some Guns N' Roses just for fun. I've done. Do I even know Patience? We're gonna do Patience. I don't even think I know this song, but we'll find out. I mean, I know the song, but like not know the song. Whistle, whistle, whistle. I vaguely remember the song. This is one of those songs where like Axl Rose had to pretend to be like a caring, decent human being, and it was beautiful. I guarantee a lot of unplanned pregnancies happened as a direct result of this song. I just don't know if I know the verse or not. We'll find out. Shed a tear 'cause I'm missing you. Still alright to smile. Girl, I think about you every day now. Something like that. Was a time when I wasn't sure, but you set my mind at ease. There is no doubt you're in my heart now. I might have to drop down. Said woman, take it slow. It'll work itself out fine. All we need is just a little patience. Said sugar, make it slow, and we'll come together fine. All we need is just a little patience. Wonder if I could have done that up. Find out next time. Oh, yeah. Something like that. Sitting here on the stairs, I'd rather be alone. If I can't have you right now, I'll wait, dear. Well, that's considerate. Sometimes I get so tense, I can't speed up the time. But you know, love, there's one more thing to consider. Said woman, take it slow, and things will be just fine. You and I'll just use a little patience. Said sugar, take the time, 'cause the lights are shining bright. You and I've got what it takes to make it. We won't fake it. Oh, never break it, 'cause I can't take it. It's gotta be a Slash solo here. It's a terrible song. like this sort of, like the sounds of my childhood, this like empty placating of love, sung by people who, like, did not understand what love was. I wonder who writes this shit for them. Is that the end of the song, or it looks like there's more? Oh, he's gonna do like the patient. I'm not gonna do that. Fuck that. Alright. Alright. I've never sang this song. We'll try Sultans of Swing. Shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park, the meantime. Nope. South of the river, you stop and you hold everything. Nope, that ain't gonna work. We're gonna jump to a little Enjoy the Silence, because I don't remember the tune. A little Depeche Mode. This will be super cheese, I'm sure. All the goth girls when I was a kid. Oh. There's a good Border Guards cover of this song. Words like violence break the silence. Come crashing in my little world. I don't remember the tune. Painful to me, pierce right through me. Can't you understand? Oh, my little girl. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. Yeah, I totally don't remember the tune for the verse in this song. Nailing it. Y'all are quiet in chat today. That's okay. I'm gonna do this for a little while longer and then I'll stop. If you want to request something. Vows are spoken to be broken. Feelings are intense, words are trivial. Pleasures remain, so does their pain. Words are meaningless and forgettable. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. I feel like next I should sing something a little more punk rock or ska. Punk or ska. I might be the only person that enjoys this time, but I do enjoy this time. God knows my kids hate it. Trying to watch TV and their dad's singing along and they can't even hear the background. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. And that's the end of the song. Alright. Let's see. Let's just do search for ska. Message to you, Rudy. I've already done that before. Take on Me is a terrible idea. Redemption Song, that's not ska. Beer by Real Big Fish. That's a possibility. Santeria, fuck that. Red Wine. Let's take a look at one of these playlists. No, let's not. Fuck that. Alright, you know what? I'm gonna do the good and the bad. We'll start with Take On Me, the Real Big Fish version. This will be awful. 100% guaranteed. Because humans can't sing this song. One, two, 3, 4. We're talking away. I don't know what's left to say. I'll say it anyway. Today's not my day to find you sign away. I'll be coming through your love, okay? Take on me. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. See, humans can't sing this. So needless to say, I'm odds and ends again, but I'll be stumbling away. Slowly learning that life is okay. Say it after me. It's no better to be safe than sorry. Take on me. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. I'm not saying choo 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 choo. Or war. It's just a good song though. Things that you say, yeah, is it a life or just to play my worries away? All the things I've got to remember, shine away. I'll be coming for your love, okay? Take on me. That's too high. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day. Take me on. I'll be. Oh wow, fuck that up. Alright, now we'll do beer. Cause I'll do better at beer. Shut up. Beer's a good song. Another Real Big Fish. It's a 2 for Tuesday. 1, 2, 3, 4. She called me late last night to say she loved me so. Didn't matter anymore. I say she never cared and that she never will. Do it all again, I guess I'll have to wait until then. And if I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. And if you're drinking, well, you know that you're my friend. And I'll say, I think I'll have myself a beer. I feel like an octave lower is the answer. Fucking ska songs. Ooh. She called me late last night to say she loved me so. But I guess you changed her mind. Well, I should have known it wouldn't be alright. But I can't live without her, so I won't even try. And if I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. And if you're drinking, well, you know that you're my friend. And I say, I think I'll have myself a beer. think I have myself a... I might do like redemption song and then call it a stream. Maybe someday I'll think of what to say. Maybe someday I'll remember what you do. She looks like heaven, maybe this is hell. Did he do it all again? She'd promise not to tell. And if I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. She said, it's okay, boy, 'cause you know we'll be good friends. And I say, I think I'll have myself a beer. I think I'll have myself a... Yeah, yeah. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh. I'm gonna see if I can find the Joe Strummer version of that. We'll see how this goes, and then this will be it. Then I'm gonna. It's a duet. When did they do a duet? No, I'm just gonna fucking sing the redemption song. Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I. Sold out to the merc. Oh, that's terrible. Not in my range at all. That was a horrible fucking idea. Horrible idea. Alright, we'll do something else. It's probably not going to be Beyonce. Just putting it out there. Okay, yeah. Cold as Ice by Foreigner. I don't know if I know this song at all, but... First go. You're as cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love. Bitch. Never take advice. Someday you'll pay the price, I know. Seen it before. Happens all the time. You're closing the door. Leave the world behind. You're digging for gold. Oh, I have no idea. This is a train wreck. Someday you'll pay. Oh, that's some wah. You're as cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love. You want paradise. Someday you'll pay the price, I know. I've seen it before. It happens all the time. You're closing the door. You leave the world behind. You're digging for gold. You're throwing away a fortune in feelings, but someday you'll pay. This is awful. Okay, Foreigner, it's supposed to be awful. Cold as ice, you know that you are. It's cold as ice to me. Yeah, this is Brilliant chord choice. Still like another minute and a quarter to go. You're as cold as ice. Cold as ice, I know. Yes, I know. You're as cold as ice. Cold as ice, I know. Oh, yes, I know. Like this whole section is literally just to make it long enough to play on the radio. As ice. Cold as ice, I know. Oh, and that strings. Oh, yes, I know. I feel like I should have one last song to just, like, not fail. What about Working for the Weekend? Have I ever done that one? I don't think I have. Do I know that one? How's the... No, I don't know the verse. We've already failed miserably. Okay, we're gonna do Careless Whisper, and this will be awful because this is not in my range, and that's just how we're gonna end it. It's just gonna be fucking what it's gonna be. Little ham song. I feel so unsure as I take your hand and lead you to the dance floor. As the music dies, something in your eyes calls to mind a silver screen, and all is sad goodbye. I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm, though it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. Should've known better than to cheat a friend and waste a chance that I've been given. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you. Oh. Time can never mend the careless whispers of a good friend. With a heart and mind, ignorance is kind. There's no comfort in the truth. Pain is all you'll find. I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm, though it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. Should've known better than to cheat a friend and waste a chance that I'd been given. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you. Never without you. Oh shit. Never without your love. The music seems so loud. I wish that we could lose this crowd. Maybe it's better this way. We hurt each other worse than things we wanna say. Could have been so good together. We could have lived Let's Dance forever. But now who's gonna dance with me? please stay. I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm, though it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. Should've known better than to cheat a friend and waste the chance that I'd been given. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you. Oh, terrible fucking song. And this is the problem with my fucking childhood. I'm gonna rant about it. Now that you're gone, now that you're gone, now that you're gone, well, I did so wrong, that you had to leave me alone. That doesn't make any timing sense. Yeah, I'm not doing that. You know, we can just fade that out the old-fashioned way by hitting pause. I'm gonna take a moment before we finish this stream. That is why I'm a broken man. I got raised in a society where guys were told that love songs were real, and that if you just like waited long enough and just were good, the girl would love you. I had to unlearn a lot of shit from all of that media that came up. Most songs that were love songs from my childhood have very ugly lyrics that are like, you know, baby, we should be together, so I'm gonna just kick down the door and like be your boyfriend now. That's not weird, right? That's how love goes. You see a girl, you think, you know what, there could be a connection there, so you kick down her door, or you stalk her, because that's what love songs kind of are. They're very seriously like stalkery vibes, and this was the timber of my childhood. You know, the John Hughes movies about how if you just like wait long enough, she'll figure out that you're the best, or you know, if you just luck into having the perfect girl or whatever. And like, this is the shit that they taught guys my age, and it's no wonder half of them have fucking miserable brains when it comes to how women are. Anyways, that's me rambling. Still fun to sing those songs, but there's an ugliness. Like, Careless Whisper is all about cheating. And that one is like, you know, it's the schmaltzy vibe of the song that I find so humorous. But like the lyrical content at least is decent. It's like, you know, I went and fucked up. I cheated on you, and now you're gone, and I'm kind of, you know, miserable about it, and I'll always have the scar of this fuck up on me, which is fine. But so much of the other stuff is just like, you are my destiny, whether you like it or not, and that shit's just grievously not cool. Anyways, that's gonna be it. I'm gonna get done here. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. In the meantime and in between time, that's it. Another edition of whatever the fuck this is that I'm doing.